for I'm getting ahead of myself here. I'll spare everybody. For anybody that's new here, what we like to do is recap the episodes before diving in proper, and we'll cut that out and host it separately on YouTube for your viewing convenience. So if you happen to find yourself just on the recap, but you want to hear our full thoughts and discussion, we will be linking that in the description box below. But without further ado, let's dive into Critical Role episode 75. And I wrote the title down. And
An Ancient Flame.
Thank you, my friend. But I believe you are the first half.
I was actually wondering if you were going to just keep going, and I was like,
that's why I started laughing before I launched into it. So I was like, he's probably going to think that I think I'm first half.
Anyway. No, yeah. So we have a great process for this. So yeah, picking up on this episode, episode 75, An Ancient Flame. Previous episode, they went to Yvonne Trevere, the Tree of Atrophy, got some really cool lore bits, and then Yvonne Trevere realized an invisible, arcane, scrying orb that was spying on them and quickly shuttered them off to basically this fiery mountain to retrieve the shard of Raushan, one of the Titans, the Emperor of, or excuse me, Empress of Fire? No, Emperor of Fire, Empress of Fire. Raushan is one and Kamort's the other one, but I can't remember all of a sudden.
I think Fire's Impress, but I'm confused, so I don't know.
Anyway, it's Raushan's fragment, though. I'm pretty sure.
Right.
And they find themselves on one of the islands in the Shattered Teeth on essentially this snowy mountaintop with a cave in the distance. They make their way to the cave. The snow is kind of melted in the cavern entrance, and they realize this is probably where we're going to get this shard. Now, going deeper into the cavern, they do find, essentially, it's like going caving. They find a tunnel that seems to be like collapsed, not by like an earthquake, but for some reason there's a collapsed tunnel. And they decide, you know what, if we can just barely wiggle our way through, we can maybe get to the bottom of wherever this goes. Now, as they do go in, they do find what seems to be like a rock that's blocking the passage. Orem kind of like wiggles with it and messes with it and realizes it is the charred skull of an orc who seemingly was traveling back up through the cave and got dislodged and met a very grim end. They travel farther through. They get to a point where the party actually splits up. Imogen, Orem, and FCG decide to go ahead and sort of track on first. Matt asks each player, are you going head first or feet first? Which, I don't know why, it's such a tense question. And remember, FCG is a robot. So FCG's like, yeah, I'll go feet first. And they all have to do basically checks to see how well they can navigate through. Imogen actually gets her ankle caught in a rock. She tries to shocking grasp to break it free, isn't able to do it. And then I think maybe Laudna like climbed up and like helped knock it free, or I honestly don't quite remember, but ultimately she's able to get it free. And the party basically, this front half, basically the tunnel opens up into this cavern with bones, armor, gold, all these random things. And there's just a layer of char on everything. And they're kind of looking around like, okay, it seems like a dead end. And then they start to notice that the floor is like this igneous rock. It's like this certain kind of stone, or maybe he described it as porous, I don't remember, but a certain kind of stone that's different from the walls. And they realize that the ground is basically a ground that has developed over time from something very hot underneath. Like all the ash and char have kind of created this layer that they now stand on. So they decide, you know what should we do? Let's just, dig a hole and see what's below us. But there's a conversation on like, well, if we dig a hole, is there going to be like an eruption of lava that's going to kill all of us? Because they can't easily get out. I will say it's around this time, the back half party, they wiggle their way through, not without Laudna also getting stuck herself. Fern is going to turn into, I think, a bat while they are in this cavern. And they ultimately do break open this hole to reveal another cavern beneath the one that they're in now that has a big pool of lava in it. Also, they note these little, Matt describes them as like Jack Skellington elves that are made of like stone and have like fiery eyes. They're like 2 feet tall, and there's about a dozen of them in this cavern, kind of peeking up, seeing what they're doing. They travel down into this cavern and basically begin to talk to these creatures. I think it's FCG cast tongues on maybe Fern. I can't remember. They realize that these creatures, which they call Doompa Loompas, these creatures don't speak primordial. And in fact, they don't have a language that anyone in the party understands. Matt actually mentions the language later in the episode. I don't know if you remember what it was. Where he asked, does someone know this language? But no one did.
Might have written it down.
But they come to find out that these are very cute creatures that, as they're having the conversation, they're literally seeing like plumes of fire come up from the lava pool near them, and the plume of lava basically shaping into a new creature and like being born, while other ones are like falling over dead. And they surmise that these creatures have very short lifespans. And in fact, they begin speaking to the self-proclaimed elder, who became the elder right after they just watched the elder basically burn out. And they're very cute. They're harmless. They're kind of like, this is where we are. And they do ask questions like, has anyone been here before? And they say something like, I think someone has come before. But they eventually ask about Raushan. They're like, do you know Raushan? And they're like, yes, the creator. And they motion over to this like lava pool around them. So they're pretty clear that the shard they're looking for is in this pool. And in typical like peak D&D fashion, I don't know what Matt envisioned them to do, but Ashton's like, yeah, I'm going to jump in there. I'm just going to jump in, dive down, go get that shard. And they're kind of like, is this the right idea? And pretty much the party as a whole, they know resurrection is not possible, but they're all like, see you later, Ashton. I think Laudna's like, hey, you're probably dead. It's been nice knowing you. Like, see you later. Imogen does cast fly on him so that he can make it to the center of the pool more easily. And he just dunks down into the lava pool, immediately taking 8d6 or 8d10.
I think it's 8d10, yeah.
Of fire damage. I can't see anything. Note also, functionally, his clothes are all melting off. And they go to the bottom of the lava pool where they find this large shard, does a strength check, is unsuccessful, can't get the shard free, takes another round of fire damage. Fern then is going to basically go and jump in to try to help, also takes fire damage. And basically uses her Stonky's ring, a throwback to EXU season 1, which I love those little details, to basically like loosen it enough for Ashton to finally, I think it was like a 25, get it free, and holds it up above the pool in like a very like Terminator, like I got it type style. They get out of the pool, and yeah, I mean, oddly enough, Ashton was like, I don't need healing. I'm fine. Even though FCG is like, you seem pretty hurt. But they look over this shard, and actually Ashton's holding it. And the whole time he's holding it, it's burning his hands every round, taking more fire damage. And they decide, is it breakable? Like, what should we do with it? Hands it over to Fern. Like maybe Fern should hold it. It burns Fern's hands. Fern's like, maybe not. Gives it back to Ashton. And then Ashton holds it to their chest and actually gets like a vision in their mind that essentially, we'll talk about it more in the episode, but kind of gives like an image of the last moments of Raushan before being basically disassembled by Laren, a calamity mention, by the way, and ultimately decides, you know what, I don't think this is for me, but it is for me. I'm honestly not sure. Around this time, Matt describes 5 figures seemingly like teleporting, like dropping in on the opposite side of the pool. It is some Ruby Vanguard, I think a couple of Ray Laurens, including one that Matt describes as a juggernaut, and seemingly Ludinus Deleth. Imogen immediately is going to do telekinesis to whip up some lava, splash it in their face, and we go to break as combat begins. So you want to take it from there?
Yes, sir. And I did look it up while you were going there. Raushan is the emperor. Kamort is the empress.
Thank you.
So yeah, Okay, so we pick up from break with combat basically starting. So they quickly resolve this telekinetic lava shove that Imogen does, and we roll initiative. Um, the party does notice though there is a white gem in Ludinus's forehead that they have not seen before. So as always with combat, just going to try to hit the highlights here. Things kick off with Imogen using telekinesis to grab the smaller Ray Lauren with telekinesis and just shoves them underneath the lava. Such a cool move. Orem actually runs up and just slashes this same one and kills it. Like, this is one of the first things that happens. They just take that guy completely off the board. Um, Ludinus actually telekinetically grabs Fern in the same way and starts like pulling her toward him. So she is like hovering over the lava as this happens. The Juggernaut Ray Laura kind of rushes in and is engaging with Orem. Meanwhile, Chet runs over and grabs the shard from Ashton and places it inside the bag of holding before going invisible. The party is kind of just unsure what to do during this whole thing. FCG is like, we need to get out of here. And again, FCG is the one that has the staff right
Right.
now. So FCG is kind of the one that would be in charge of getting them out of there with teleport. So they're trying to do that, but everyone is kind of split up right now. And, the least of which is Fern, who is currently, held by Ludinus. So there's kind of some chaos of over like what exactly they should be doing, but combat continues. Fern, still held, can cast spells, so she casts a wall of stone around Ludinus to block his line of sight in an attempt that maybe that would make him have to drop the telekinesis, but it does not. It still holds. So the rest of the crew basically is just dealing damage to the Juggernaut Ray Laura and just doing what they can. When it gets back to Orem's turn, he runs up and does some pushing attacks on the Juggernaut to push them back toward the lava, and successfully does so. But then he action surges to get all of his attacks back again and does it again to like fully submerge them in the lava. And between that and the 6 different attacks, Orem gets the "How do you want to do this" on this huge guy. Um, really awesome moment. So on Ludinus's next turn, he basically says that like, how rude of you all to not like talk with me. Like, we just came to talk, but since that's not how things are going, implying he's gonna have to do something else now. So he uses Quicken spell to cast Dimension Door and is like, let's go just you and I talk somewhere else, like referring to Fern. And he begins pulling her towards this dimension door. So everyone starts to freak out because they're like, oh, we cannot let him get out of here with Fern. So they're all trying to do whatever they can to stop this. And for most of them, that's just dealing damage to him and hoping that they can break his concentration. Um, Fern casts Wall of Fire to do this, but Ludinus counterspells it with the nat 20. So it fizzles out. Laudna summons her Hound of Ill Omen again to attack. It does, and it actually does knock Ludinus prone, but he maintains concentration. And one of the other bad guy guards, not the Ray Lauren, comes over and actually kills the Hound and, protects Ludinus. So combat continues. Ashton's hitting Ludinus. Everyone's hitting him, but he's maintaining concentration until finally Imogen lightning bolts and kills this guard that just ran over to help him, and also makes Ludinus drop his concentration. So at this point, Ludinus says, it's a shame, but a lesson can still be learned here. And he begins to cast a 9th level spell. Marisha goes to counterspell it, but it's 9th level. So we're told she will need, I think it's a 19, which means she'll need a 14 or higher on the dice to be successful. And she rolls a 14 exactly. So Ludinus then goes to counterspell her counterspell, and Matt is ruling it that it's got to be a DC 13, and he only hits a 12, so he fails to counterspell the counterspell. So then Ludinus says, well, at the very least, I have more information, and then he just walks into the lava pool and like kind of belly flops into it, and just kind of disintegrates into snow, as Matt describes it. Fern quickly like digs through his like lava melty form to grab the opal that was in his forehead, and they also grab his robes, which seem to not burn. Um, Combat is over at this point. All the other little minions had been taken care of. So they loot everybody. I think they get like 300 something gold, a couple of random weapons. And they're like, okay, what do we do now? And they ultimately decide, well, we're obviously got to get out of here, and our best bet is probably to go to Whitestone to meet up with Imahara Joe, and hopefully check in with Timothy Chalamet. So they gather up. FCG teleports them. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention was Ludinus clocks the fact that FCG has his staff during the combat. He's like, "Oh, you
Right.
guys have been prying."
And
Were you going to add something as well?
a detail that I forgot, they're going back to Whitestone because Matt helps them as they were looking at the shard previously. They remembered they had the vest that seemingly was able
Right.
to consume an item.
Right. So yeah. So they're going to Whitestone to get Imahara Joe, who has been working on that harness,
Right.
to hopefully utilize for this shard. So they gather up. FCG teleports them, and Matt says we will resolve the teleport. With the solstice funkiness going on. If hopefully everything goes all right, but all that will be resolved in the next episode. So that is where this one ends. Once again, episode 75 of Critical Role Campaign 3, An Ancient Flame. And of course, if you want to hear our full discussion and you are just on our recap video, it will be linked down below.